Hello everyone, welcome to my guide to Stamina Sorcerer for the Waking Flames patch. My build for Stamina Sorcerer this patch is drastically different from most meta applications and uses two sets which sees very little endgame uses, and one of which is not known to most of the community at all. So the foundation of this build uses the Vateshran Dual Wield weapons, Executioner's Blade, and I'll go further into it later in this video. But before we start, I would like us to run through the pros and cons of this particular setup. So for the pros, this is an off-meta build, but it is capable of doing meta build level of endgame DPS up to 114k plus. So if off-meta builds are your cup of tea, then this certainly is a good one. Secondly, this build has a very simple rotation. And in fact, I believe this to be the simplest rotation in the game at the moment. Many people refer to Stamina Templars for this, but the channel nature of biting jabs make it incredibly difficult to weave, especially for high latency players. Our spammable is instant cast, and thus is much easier to weave, and you can block cast it as well, which most meta stamina builds cannot currently do. Following up on the previous point, since our build uses a weapon skill as a spammable, we can also trigger weapon enchantment solely through it, and we lose less damage than most other builds if we cannot light attack weave. And so if you're not so good at light attack weaving, then this build is perfect for you. Due to the nature of a spammable, we also have excellent cleave damage through hidden blades bouncing between targets, and this really helps us during multi-target fights. Lastly, despite us being a stamina build, we are capable of standing at range without losing too much of our damage. Most stamina melee builds become completely incapable of projecting damage outside of melee range, whereas we are still able to use almost all of our skills and we lose out only on light attack damage. And now for the cons, and really there is only just the one. So we need to be standing to the back of our target. I'll go more into detail later in this video, but we will not be able to do any damage if we're in any other positions. This makes the build unviable in various scenarios such as Sunspire, but in most other cases it's not a significant hindrance to our ability. However, careful positioning is still needed from the player. The fact that we also need to stand to the back of the target means that we're also not a solo build, and whilst you could easily do any overland content with this build, it is not in any capacity, however, optimized for Maelstrom Arena or Vateshran Hollows. Now let's go into the build itself. The most important piece of gear I want to talk about is the Vateshran Dual Wield. This set changes the behaviour of Hidden Blade and make it such that it will deal increasing damage starting from 100% of the target's health. This increase in damage is so strong that it surpasses most other abilities you would use. To give some concrete examples, Hidden Blade, after morphing into Shrouded Daggers, will surpass Surprise attack in terms of damage at 88% of target health, and Relentless Focus at 44% of target health, and it will start dealing damage equal to Nightblade's Execute at around the same health percentages. Since Vateshran Dual Wield has such strong single cast damage, class with dots is much less favoured for this build, and the best possible class for this setup is the Stamina Sorcerer, due to their passive damage from pets not taking up precious skill cast, which we could use to use Hidden Blades, and their strong passives interacting favourably with our damage abilities. One thing that I want to note about the Vateshran Dual Wield is that the execute effect only occurs if you're standing to the back of the target. The back of the target is as defined in this picture, enclosed by two 45-degree lines. You have to be standing inside this location to deal damage to the target, so it's vital that you only take this build to situations where this is possible, i.e. not Sunspire. Now, with front bar weapons secured, we need to look at other sets. The introduction of Harpoonen's Wading Kilt in Blackwood places builds like us in a very awkward position. The kilt is too strong not to use, but if we do, we lose out on the second 5-piece set, and due to this, front bar arena sets such as the Master Dual Wield are less strong this patch. Fortunately for us, we have an elegant, if not long forgotten solution to this issue. So obviously we need Reliquant as our first 5-piece set, and alongside it with Coat, this leaves only 4 more pieces of gear to play with. And for this we turn to Eagle Eye. This is a 3-piece set that increases our universal weapon crit on the 2-piece and gives us 7.5% weapon crit to our ranged direct damage attacks. This set was obviously intended by the developers to be used solely for bow builds, as evidenced by the fact that it only drops in bows and jewelries. However, no same bow build would actually use this, because even for them, most of their skills are not ranged direct damage. For us though, this set was tailor-made. Shrouded Daggers, despite being a dual skill, counts as a ranged direct damage ability and benefits from this set. Since Shrouded Daggers also far overtake any other skills in its damage percentage compared to other builds, it means that despite the set's harsh requirements, it provides significant enough power to outshine any other possible sets. After this, we just need one last piece of Slime Crawl to finish our body set. On the off bar, we use a Maelstrom Infernal Staff. Despite being a stamina build, Maelstrom Infernal Staff offers enough damage for us to warrant its use, and Elemental Blockade also lines up well with our Hurricane ability in the rotation. We don't use either the Black Rose Dual Wield or the Maelstrom Bow because we really need a magic ability to offset our terrible sustain before 50%, since Shrouded Daggers cost a lot before that point. For the gear, you can use non-perfected gear and they will work perfectly fine, but I do recommend farming perfected gear if you can, since they would make some difference to the build. There is no need for perfected Maelstrom Inferno though, if you don't have it. In terms of traits, all armor pieces should be divine, enchanted with maximum stamina. Jewelry should be bloodthirsty, enchanted with increased physical harm. Infernal staff should be infused with weapon damage. Both dual-wield weapons should be daggers, main hand should be nirn-honed and off-hand sharpened, with poison and flame enchantments. The one-piece slime core should be light for the penetration passive, and I've found this combination of traits and weight to produce the best results. Gear sorted, let's go into various other aspects of the build. Food-wise, we use lava food soup and sorceress, and we use the traditional weapon power potions. If you want a budget option, I will provide one further in the video. We also use the Thief Mundus for extra crit. Race-wise, Dark Elf is the best, with Khajiit around 1% behind. Orcs, Red Guards, High Elves, and even Imperials are all fine choices, but range from being 1% to 3% behind the top races. Now let's go into skills and rotations. We use both the Twilight Tormentor and the Unstable Clanthea as our pets, and we have to place them on both bars. Bound Armaments is also used on both bars as a passive buff as well as an active ability. Shrouded Daggers is our main spammable, and that's placed on our front bar. Barbed Trap is also placed on the front bar for Fighter's Guild passive and minor force. And on the off bar, we have Elemental Blockade and Hurricane as 2 other damage skills. Greater Storm Atronach is used as the off bar ultimate, and Flawless Dawnbreaker is placed on the front bar. So for rotations, I have 2. One is a simple static rotation that's easy for any beginners to follow, and one more dynamic rotation to achieve optimal DPS. However, due to the sheer simplicity of this build, there isn't too much difference in terms of damage for these 2 rotations. For the simple static rotation, we cast Elemental Blockade, Hurricane, and then Barbed Trap. From them, we use Shrouded Daggers all the way through. We drop Hurricane after 30% and use Storm Atronach whenever it is ready. For a more advanced rotation, we mix in Bound Armaments and cast all other skills as they run out. A 4-stack Bound Armament should be dropped at around 50%, Hurricane at 30%, and don't refresh Barbed Trap below 10% and Blockade below 5%. Also, you want to cast Bound Armament at 3-stack, because your last light attack weave will trigger the 4th stack. Now, let's look into 2 further setup for general use. The first setup is for general dungeon running. Instead of Barbed Trapped on the front bar, we use Warding Blades, which gives us a spammable for AoE. And on the off bar, we replace the passive Bound Armaments with Channel Acceleration for the minor force buff. This is the setup I use most often. It provides a perfect balance between AoE and single target damage, as well as being easy to use. When faced with larger groups of mobs, you can also use Destruction Ultimate on the off bar in place of Storm Atronach. Even though Eagle Eye does nothing for our AoE skills, this setup is still more than capable of clearing any veteran dungeons. The second setup is for a budget version of the build. Since Shrouded Dagger already gives us major brutality, we can use Evil Haunter in place of Barbed Trap for major savagery, and move Barbed Trap to the off bar to replace Bound Armaments. This setup gives you almost the exact same amount of DPS, but you can use trash stamina pots to save on gold. And now that's all I want to say for this guide. Please enjoy this Parse of 114.4K, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment sections.